About 10 years ago, I was introduced to a science called physiognomy, the science of reading the structure of the face. I've studied psychology for most of my life, and Sigmund Freud, when he was creating psychoanalysis, started at looking at phrenology, the bumps on your head, and he went, you can lump that into other crazy categories. But when he looked at the facial structure, he was able to identify that there are certain characteristics in your face that really do reveal who you are from the inside out. So as we get started today, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you understand the people around you. How many of you, by a show of hands, have ever met someone that in the first time that you met them, you knew, I don't like them? We've all had that experience, and most of us have been like, I don't know why I don't like them. I just think they're an idiot, and I don't want to be around them very much. So if you've had that experience the same way that I have, what you realize is that all of us have an instinct about other people. But the instinct is really based on a scientific and biological inbreeding in our brain. So I'm going to talk to you about how you make sense of people based on that. When you start thinking about the box that Jacob talked about, we try to think that, okay, we have to have an exact structure for the way that we understand people. But there is a way to take that box and get rid of it. You're not just one way and you're not just another. We can understand what your basics are, but I want you to understand also you can actually change the structure of your face if you learn to change the way that you think and the things that you believe. So as you look at the person's face, you look at a few things and you go, ooh, that stands out on that person, and that stands out on that person. They must mean something. So if you don't mind, just kind of look back and forth at your neighbor and see if there's any weird characteristics on their face that you notice right off the bat. I noticed those things too, and they are weird. The first thing that I want to talk about is the shape of a forehead. When you look at a person's forehead, it will either be round or it will be flat, and it's possible that there is a ridge. So when you look at the side profile of a person, if it looks flat right across there, or if it looks rounded across there, and if you see a little ridge that sits right there. Round forehead individuals make their decisions based on their emotions. So you're looking at a person, if their forehead is round, running around like this, those are individuals that when they get to a final decision, what they're doing is going, oh, I feel like this is the right way to go. For those who have that flat forehead, they go, yeah, forget that feeling stuff. I'm just going to tell you that what is logical and makes the most sense is this. The ridge are the rule people. So what Jacob talked about getting away from the rules, the people with those strong ridges, they have their own rules and their own systems for the way that they do everything. You will see a lot of police officers. You will see a lot of military individuals, and you will see a lot of people that don't like to think outside the box that have that ridge across their forehead. You then look at the eyebrows of an individual. And the eyebrows are my favorite thing on a person, and I'm only going to talk about 3 characteristics here, but there are about 35 different things that you can learn about a person's psychology based on their eyebrows. You have either flat eyebrows, which means I start with task before relationships. Or you have rounded eyebrows, which means I start with relationships before task. If you raise your eyebrows and look at your neighbor, we're looking for a little arch that sits on your eyebrows. The face is divided left and right. The left side of your own face represents your personal life. The right side of your own face represents your professional life. So internal world, external world. So look at your neighbor and raise your eyebrows. If you have a spike on the left, that means that you have a strong need for control in your personal life. If you have a spike on the right, that means you have a strong need for control in your professional life. But if you have a spike on both sides, you just need freaking control. That's what you're looking for. A person's mouth and their smile tell you a lot about the person as well. People with a very small mouth, they're very businesslike. They want to just get down to business. They're not as gregarious and outgoing and open. People with a larger mouth, they're the talkers. They're the ones that are always trying to share something with other people. But the thing I like most about the mouth is the angle of the smile. So when you kind of smile, you see how mine goes up and to the left. That means I am a sarcastic individual in my personal life. If it goes up and right, you're sarcastic at work. So you're looking at the way that people approach from the sarcasm and the wit and the charm that they use. If it's just even, that means you tend to not be that sarcastic in the way that you interact with others. In particular, we will deflect in our personal lives, if it's up and left, when things get tense. Up and right, we get sarcastic and witty and go, you didn't really mean that about that report, did you? That can't be that important. That's up and to the right. So you start learning the way that people approach tension based on the angle of their smile. The next thing that you look at is a person's nose. The nose tells you a lot about what's gone on in their history. You look in particular at a person's bridge of their nose. If you were to run your finger down your nose, if you have a bump that sits on your nose and it wasn't broken by someone that didn't like you, let me justify this, then you have some defensiveness in your personality. Fascinating to me, where the bump sits tells you when in their life they became defensive. If a person became defensive early on in their life, the bump sits very high. Mine sits all the way up right where my glasses sit, which means that at the age of 7 is when I started being defensive. Which makes sense because I went through therapy based on what I experienced in 2nd grade. The lower down the nose the bump sits, the more recent it was. You look at the sides of the nose and you're looking for grooves on the side of the nose. The grooves on the sides of the nose tell you how independent the person is. If a person is fiercely independent, they will have deep grooves on the sides of their nose. Interestingly, and you've probably never stared at people's noses on purpose before, you can have a deep groove on one side and no groove on the other. So you'll see differences in the way that they're independent at home versus at work. A couple of other things. You look for a ball on the end of a person's nose. These people hate being left out of information. They need to know everything that's going on. Look at reporters. If you will look at any news anchor or any reporter, what you will find is that they all have a ball on the end of their nose. And then the septum, the center point of the nose, when that comes down, these people need to work for not-for-profit organizations. They're incredibly mission-driven. They will ask the question, why, all the time, and they want to understand how to make a difference. They can't work just for money. The next thing that you look at is a person's eyes. A person's eyes will be either angled up from the inside to the outside, straight, or angled down. This tells you their outlook on life. Makes sense? It's the eyes. If it's angled up, they're optimistic. Angled down, they're very good at anticipating problems. I don't want to say pessimistic. And if they're straight, these are the individuals that will say this statement a lot. Well, it is what it is. So if it is what it is, these are your realists in the world. They're the ones that are looking at life and going, the glass isn't half empty. The glass isn't half full. The glass just needs to be drunk. That's what you're looking at with these individuals. The size and the shape of ears are fascinating. I couldn't find this in any other research, so I tested a whole bunch of people with a test called the VAC learning model and then correlated the pictures of their faces in order to understand, can you tell the learning style and language pattern of a person by some characteristic of their face? The ears are what showed that. If you have large ears, generally that stick out just a little bit, these are your auditory learners. In combination, you'll almost always have large ears, small iris. If you have small ears, large iris, these are your visual learners. And if you have ears that look like they are folded back, these are the individuals that are kinesthetic learners. So visual, auditory, and kinesthetic are the 3 language patterns. If you look at your child and you wonder why the teacher keeps saying, I think you need to test them for ADD or ADHD, Look for their ears first. If they have folded back ears, they are very action-oriented. They literally cannot learn unless they are doing something. They need to doodle at all times or move around. School, like Jacob was talking about, is not designed for the active people. It is designed to sit and look and learn, and that's it. The next thing that you look at is the structure of the chin. This tells you their resolve in the world and how they judge themselves. Think John Cena for just a minute. That giant square chin. Those are people that judge themselves based on their goals and their accomplishments. Whether or not people like them is secondary. That's not their main concern. Their main concern is, am I getting things done the way that I need to get them done? You then look for a rounded chin. These individuals judge themselves based on whether or not people like them. And this is their interpretation of whether or not people like them. So it's based on relationships. The pointed chin, how many of you have ever seen a Disney movie with a villain? The pointed chin represents self-centered or self-absorbed. The people with pointed chins have a tendency to focus just on what's good for them without regard for whether or not people see them as accomplishing tasks or whether or not people see them as building relationships. Their focus is solely on what's in it for me. People who will do bad things will have a pointed chin, but it will not be just a pointed chin. So you can see people that are bad. One of the ladies that coached me in face reading, she profiled the facial structures for the TSA, Transportation Safety Administration. And she created a profile picture of what to look for people who are likely to do bad things on an airplane. Pointed chin was one of those things. Ripples in the jaw was another. Cutting off the top half of the iris was another. So if you see sclera below the eye, the top half of the iris is cut off. They have 3 little ripples in their jaw right there and a pointed chin. Take the next flight. That's all I'm saying. The size of your eyes tells us a lot as well. So look at your neighbor. If they have the eyes that kind of set out from the head, so they come out, these are the people that need a lot of attention and they absolutely hate being interrupted. They do not want you to talk when they're trying to talk. People with the smaller eyes tend to be more introspective. They're looking at what they think internally before they express anything publicly. The lower eyelid, if it is rounded, those are the romantic and sentimental types. They have a lot of meaning attached to the things that they do. Flat lower eyelid, not so much on the attachment. It's more, let me just size up the situation, see what we're dealing with here, and we'll move forward. We talked about the angle of the eye, so you know optimism, realism, pessimism. You talked about the size of the eye, so you understand that. The top of the eyelid is the next thing you look at. So when you look straight at your neighbor, if they see eyelid on the top, you don't want to sit around and talk about stuff. You got to do something. You're the action person. But if you look at the person and there's no eyelid that's showing, you're a thinker. So you have 2 different approaches for the way when you're trying to make decisions that you would approach that. And then finally, if your eyelid folds over, I want you to think about this for just a minute. Please take some time off. You are overloaded. You're taking on more than you can handle, and you're wearing yourself out. So your eyelid folds over like that. Those are the ones that have stressed themselves out too much. Your ears reveal a great deal. So Jacob, you notice, has angled ears. When you see an ear that is angled, those are people that see the world from a different perspective. So typically they're seeing things that other people do not see. If you see a person whose ear looks chewed up, right up here on the left, they have trouble processing the world the way that others do coming in. If it looks chewed up on the right, on the upper portion, they have trouble expressing things the way that the rest of the world expresses them. So they will process different and express different if the ears are messed up on the top. You also look for notches on the ear which tell you when did they have a change in their life. Right up here, look for a notch at the very top. That's 18 years old, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. The brain is finished developing at the age of about 25, so you stop notching at about the age of 25. Starts at 18. If it's before 18, it's 17, 16, 15, 14. 14 is the earliest you will have a significant perception shift because that is the start of the third stage of psychological development. So when you're looking at the way that you process the world, the thing that you have to keep in mind is that we all process in our own unique ways. But also you have to keep in mind that we shift significantly in perception sometimes. Personal life, professional life. So think about that from that perspective. The lines on the forehead are the next thing that you look at. So wrinkle your forehead and show your neighbor. If you have lines that run all the way across without breaking, those are your very tenacious people. The people who are extremely tenacious, when they start it, they finish it. The next thing that you look for is, do you have lines that break up a lot like mine do on my forehead? When people have lines that break up like that, those are the individuals that are creative a lot and have a lot of trouble keeping their focus. I have to actually have something that keeps me on track. So I schedule, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes, and I'm not doing anything else. I literally have to turn the internet off on my computer because I have a monkey in my brain. And that monkey is the instant gratification monkey, and it is vying for position. I'll think, I'm going to do my research and get ready for my talk. And then all of a sudden I go, but I really want to know what Justin Bieber's mom thought when he was 15. We get distracted very easily if we have that monkey in our brain. So the chin and forehead combinations are something that absolutely fascinate me. I tested 300 people's temperament, and then I looked at their facial structure to find out, can you tell the personality of a person without having to take one of those long tests? And trust me, I love tests. I love giving people tests even more than I like taking them. But I wanted to know, is there a faster way? How many of you have ever taken the DISC profile? That's a big chunk of you. So when you look at the DISC profile, there is a correlation so that you know, and this is at over a 90% accuracy, you know very clearly who a person is, what they're actually like, and how to drive them forward. So dominant individuals, you have the square chin and the round forehead. The dominant individual is very big picture in their thinking. It's all about the end result. It's about getting things done. They may leave a trail of bodies in their path, but they're going to accomplish some killer things along the way. The eyes, these are your Energizer bunnies. They have a lot of energy, they're very excited, and they're not really doing anything. They are the best people for throwing a party, though. They will always have their own margarita machine, and they are okay with staying up for 3 days straight as long as it's fun. That is a round chin, about relationship, round forehead, emotion. They're also very big picture thinkers, just like the dominant individuals are, but they're not task focused like the Ds. They are people focused. So like, let's have fun. If you go back a few years, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, if you go back in time, these are the ones that had cameras and never developed film. To this day, they probably have 57 rolls of Fuji film in a box under their bed. The S's are my favorite people in the world to have as employees. The S's are the round chin, flat forehead. They want to please people, and they're very logical. They're the only ones that are actually balanced between task and relationship in their approach to the world. They're phenomenal because they want to work behind the scenes. They never want to cause a stink. They don't like conflict, and they just want to do their job. Their worst enemy is a meeting because they know that D's will be in that meeting. They go to the meeting, they're like, please don't call me, please don't call me, please don't call me, please don't call me. And they go, hey, Jody, why don't you speak up? And you're like, I agree with everyone. I just want to be happy. They work for consensus in keeping things smooth. The C's are the final of that. They are the square chin and the flat forehead. When you start thinking about what a C is like to work with and interact with, everything in their world is about doing it right. It's about process. I do a lot of work in healthcare, and I'm going to give you a description of why administration and nurses have trouble. Nurses are almost always C's. Administration is almost always D's. So D's come in and they go, I've got a great idea. We're going to change immediately. Here's what we're going to do. And the C's goes, no, we can't change right now. Not immediately. I need 48 hours to process the idea that we're going to change. Not to change itself. So when you start thinking about what they are like and the difference, C's are about doing the right thing in the right process. It's the steps. The D's are about getting something done. It's the end result. So D's don't think about process and C's don't think about end result. So can you see why they clash a little bit? But they're very task driven on both of them. Both of them want to accomplish something great, but neither of them wants to do it the way that the other one is doing it. So that's the way that you start looking at the temperament or basic personality of a person. Square and round, D. Round and round, I. Round and flat, S. Square and flat, C. Now, from the perspective of looking at that, it looks something similar to this. And on my Facebook page next week, I actually have an app where you can go in and with one click you go, which one of these am I? And you look for the picture that matches you best. And then it gives you your report based on being a dominant, influence, steadiness, or conscientious. If you have a picture of another person, you can just go look at them and go, that's them. And you can tell what it is or what it means to be D, I, S, or C. So it makes it much quicker and much easier to understand your personality by doing it that way. Violent tendencies, just so you know what to avoid at the airport. Top half of iris cut off, ripples in the jaw, pointed chin, and a round forehead. Why the round forehead? They're emotional decision makers. If you logically try to think about doing something violent, you would go, you know, a lot of people get caught for that. Like bank robbers, for example. They never think about getting caught. But they all get caught eventually. So you've got to make sure that you are dealing with the right kinds of people. What's amazing to me is when you look at a person's face, you can tell the kind of career they should do. You can tell what they should be like in interacting. And you can also tell what it's going to be like to interact with that person. From a relationship standpoint, as a leader, as a coach, as a trainer, the quicker that I can size people up, the faster and easier I can connect with them. By understanding the way that a person processes the world, what I'm not looking for is how to control them. What I'm looking for is how to connect with them. So those quadrants, D, I, S, and C, I and S are people, D and C are task, S and C are detail and process, and D and I are big picture. That's the way you start understanding how to connect. I've been testing personalities for the last 17 years to get to this point. By finally being able to go, that's who you are. Now when I coach, I have the ability to go, I need to communicate very directly and somewhat aggressively. They're a D. If I'm soft or nice, they're going to go, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. If they're an I need to be their buddy so that they'll listen to what I have to say. If they're an S, I need to be very soft and always give them options. If they're C, I need to make sure and be as detail-oriented, I started to say anal retentive, as detail-oriented as I can be so that I can make sure everything's exactly like they need it. The brain has mirror neurons, so our natural tendency is, how many of you have seen when couples are married for like 50 years how they start to look alike? That's the mirror neurons in your brain. When you start looking from a mirror neuron perspective, we start reflecting the thoughts of the people we hang around a lot. So when your mom told you as a junior high kid, you be careful who you hang around with, you're going to end up just like them. She was right. She was understanding some deep psychology there. The mirror neurons reflect other people. If you want to learn to be creative, you hang out with people like Jacob Breeden. If you want to learn to be really, really smart, well, hopefully all of us who are speaking today would be good candidates for that. You look for the things in other people that you want to reflect, and then you connect with those people. When I first went into business, I wanted to be rich. So guess who I hung out with? Rich people. Honestly, by the time I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be wealthy. So I started hanging around first with a guy that was one of the original investors for Blockbuster Video, before they had the wrong CEO. When they first started off, this guy took about a $200,000 investment, turned it into $45 million. He did very well with that one, as well as a number of others. Connect with the people that you want to be like. If you want to grow, find a mentor. If you want to be like them, think like them, you've got to hang out with them. Buy them coffee, go where they go, do what they do, because your brain will start mapping it and going, that's what I've got to do. I got to be just like them in order to be successful. We dance to the beat of our own drum, but we can also learn to dance to the beat of other people's drums if we just learn to hang around with them a little bit. It's more important to understand why a person is than it is to understand who a person is. Our history has a story. In a book that I'll be releasing in March of this year, I'm talking about facing the facts, the story of who you are written all over your face. So as you start thinking about the story that you're telling, the more you understand how to connect with a person, the more you understand who they are, reflected right here, the easier it becomes to be wildly successful in connecting with them. I want you to understand that when you are trying to connect with people, it is not about control. It is not about convincing them to do something. It's about connecting with them quickly, building a relationship with them so that they want to follow you. One of my favorite quotes was by John Maxwell, and I'm going to end with this. He said, if you believe that you're a leader, but you turn around and see that no one is following, you're just out taking a walk. Go out of your way to connect with people today and in the future, and you will find that success becomes natural and it becomes an easy byproduct of your ability to communicate and connect. I'm Jody Holland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great job, Jody. Great job.